Yo, what's going on everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Alright, so if you've opened up Pokemon Go recently, you may have noticed a pop-up that states that Niantic has changed the terms of service for Pokemon Go. And I totally recognize that a majority of players are just going to hit accept and go about their day. But I actually think that if you read between the lines of this new terms of service, there's a lot of things to be concerned about, and I really do want to talk about that here. Now, there's a lot of things in the new terms of service where it's basically Niantic just covering their bases, and that's totally understandable because every single terms of service for a video game is always going to have different legal terminology where it's going to protect the developers of that game for any kind of legal trouble that might come up in the future, and Niantic definitely added a bunch of things related to that. But there's also a lot of things related to your data, as well as how Niantic could detect cheating that I really do think is going to rub a lot of players the wrong way. So yeah, let's go over point by point for what's in this new terms of service, and let me give you my thoughts regarding every single one of them. Now, in the new terms of service, Niantic states that your account can be terminated at any time without notice if you breach their terms of service. I think this is pretty standard for any terms of service. If you are going to break the rules, then they reserve the right to ban your account. That's something that is actually not new. I feel like that's something that was in the old terms of service and it's just being listed here, but yeah, that's pretty common for every terms of service. Now, if you play Pokemon Go and you accept these terms of services, you waive your right to participate in a class action lawsuit or a class-wide arbitration. This is very interesting because, yes, Niantic has been the target of class action lawsuits in the past. The one that comes to mind is of course related to the first ever Pokemon Go Fest, where it actually produced a class action lawsuit where players sued Niantic for all of the travel expenses and all of the hotel and different things like that related to that disaster of a first event. So I think Niantic is essentially covering themselves here. They do not want to go through something like that again, and with a lot of players being frustrated with some of their decisions, I'm pretty sure someone is actually talking about committing to a class action lawsuit for feeling ripped off from Pokemon Go. But that's besides the point. I really do think that this is something that is not going to go over well with a lot of players because players would like to have that option if they feel like they're getting ripped off or they're getting screwed over by Niantic. But unfortunately, with this new terms of service, you're essentially waiving your right to do that. Now, Niantic states that no free funds for virtual goods or virtual money will be given to any player once they make a purchase. And I really do not like this personally because there are definitely cases where players will buy too many Pokecoins more than they intended to, or let's say that you give your phone to a kid and they buy just a whole bunch of Pokecoins and you did not give them permission to do so. Yes, I totally recognize in much of those cases that's going to be at the fault of the player, but I still think it's kind of unfortunate that Niantic is essentially telling you here that you're going to be out of luck in those situations, and they reserve the right to never give you a refund. But something you should keep in mind is that this could go into a lot of things within Pokemon Go, like with special event tickets or with the research tickets, like if there is a problem with any of them, Niantic essentially does not need to refund you if there is a problem with those things. I'm sure the case can be made that they should refund you for certain things, but I really do think that this is very concerning because Niantic could also present a case where they should not have to ever refund you. Now, this is something that I think a lot of players are going to be extremely bothered by, and yes, I do agree that this is essentially an invasion of privacy, but Niantic can employ mechanisms to detect cheating and respond to cheating, including checking your device for unauthorized software. So if at any point Niantic develops methods to search your phone for any kind of unauthorized cheating software, they can now do that legally, and I know for a fact that this is definitely going to be very controversial because players do not want app developers to go through their phones and checking for different things, because even if you're not cheating and you're not doing anything malicious, Niantic will still reserve the right to go through your phone and check for that stuff. Let's go over the next point. So, Niantic states that they are not liable for any damages or losses resulting from the use of their services. And I agree with this one. Like, if you're going to be playing Pokemon Go in a dangerous neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning, and if something happens to you, that's more on you and not Niantic. Like, they're not giving you a reason to go out to bad neighborhoods or in bad situations. You really need to watch out for yourself while you're playing Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is just a game. Like, it's a game for you to go out and play, and where you go out and play is really going to be up to you. Do not put yourself in any kind of dangerous situations. Be aware of your surroundings, and just in general, play the game very safely and you'll be okay. I think this is totally fine for them to add this into their terms of service because they're essentially just covering their bases. Because I'm sure there's going to be someone out there who does something very stupid and causes a huge problem, or maybe they get injured in some way, and they're going to blame Niantic for that when it's really their own fault. So yeah, I'm personally okay with this being added in. That's something that you also find to be very typical of any terms of service that involves physical activity. So yeah. Now, Niantic can change or remove virtual money or virtual goods at any time without liability. So this means that they could take stuff out of your account, like let's say there's some sort of in-game bug where it gives you way too many items or something like that. They could essentially take those items out now and you can't do anything about it. So I don't necessarily see this as a big problem, but at the same time, I think this could be used very maliciously in the future, but that's just me being very pessimistic. Niantic could use your data for event features, or they may share it with third parties. Oh boy, so this is definitely going to create a lot of controversy. In case you aren't aware, there is definitely a conspiracy theory going out there that like Niantic is selling your data, your location data, and all of your user data for the sake of making a profit with third parties. I don't necessarily buy into that theory, mainly because I've talked to a lot of people over at Niantic regarding this specific issue, and they've all denied it. And I tend to agree with them because I don't necessarily think that is something that Niantic is interested in doing. But now they have the ability to do it. Like, they could legally do it and they can get away with it. So this does definitely add credence to that conspiracy theory. I think anyone who believes that is definitely going to feel like, yeah, Niantic is definitely sharing your data to third parties, but I don't necessarily think that's the case, but you can believe whatever you want to believe. Now, Niantic could refuse admission or remove you from events without refund for non-compliance with their terms or misconduct. So I think this is also another thing that you typically see with terms of service. I just think it's very interesting that they're including it into the game's terms of service rather than a separate terms of service for their specific in-game events. Like, if they're doing a sale for Pokemon Go Fest, for example, then, you know, they're going to have their own rules for that event. And I find it interesting that they would add this to the game's terms of service rather than the terms of service for that specific event. I don't know if you follow me there, but yeah, this is also something that you typically see with terms of services, so I'm not necessarily in disagreement with this. I just find it interesting that it's in the game's terms of service. Now, Niantic can use your likeness and data for promotional purposes without compensation. Oh man, so this is another thing that adds credence to that conspiracy theory. Basically, they're saying they could use your data or they could use your likeness and they don't have to pay you for it. Now, I don't necessarily like any of this, mainly because I'm one of those people who feels like you should be the owner of your data, that no company has the right to do anything with your data without your permission or compensating you. Like, data ownership is such a big deal for me. So yeah, I really do not like this because essentially what they're saying is that they reserve the right to use your data however they see fit, and they do not need to compensate you for it. Yeah, I think that's not necessarily a good thing, but again, I think it's totally understandable that Niantic would add this into their terms of service because let's say it does come out that they are selling your data. Well, you can't sue them for it because you agree to let them do it because of this terms of service. So it is what it is, I guess, but it's really unfortunate that there's stuff like this in this new terms of service. Now, Niantic is not responsible for third-party websites or resources linked through their services. This is basically them covering their bases once again. If they have a link to a third-party website in the game through, let's say, like an in-game advertisement, then they're not responsible for anything that might happen because of that website. So yeah, this is again stuff that you typically see in terms of services. Now, you assume all risks associated with attending or participating in events. Yeah, this is more language based on the current climate of the Americas. Unfortunately, we have a lot of mass pew-pewing and stuff like that, so I feel like Niantic is essentially covering their bases. Basically, they're saying that, yes, this is a risk that can happen from in-game events through mass gatherings. So you're essentially playing at your own risk, and I totally understand that, like why this would be in the terms of service. Alright, so Niantic can change event features or cancel events without compensation. I, again, do not like this at all, because when it comes to in-game events, they are definitely an investment. Like, if I were to go to a live in-person Pokemon Go Fest, I'm also paying for plane tickets, I'm also paying for hotel and travel, like, if I'm out there, like, paying for Ubers to get to the venue, and if something were to happen that would cause the event to get canceled, Niantic doesn't have to do anything about it. They're not liable for anything. Now, I don't necessarily think Niantic is never going to compensate players if an event gets canceled. I think they've been pretty good about that. But now they reserve the right to not be able to compensate you. And I really think the only reason why this is in the terms of service is because let's say they have any kind of compensation for a canceled event and players find it to be insufficient. So they create a lawsuit because of that. Niantic is essentially covering their bases here. I don't think they ever intend to never compensate players for canceled events, considering the PR nightmare that would be, but yeah, essentially, this is in the terms of service, so maybe it's going to discourage players from ever going to Go Fest. I really do not think so, but that is definitely a possibility. Niantic can employ security measures and searches at events, and refusal may result in denied entry. So essentially what they're doing is more in-person event stuff in the terms of service. Again, this is basically them saying that they could search you and they could have security before you enter the park or the venue. That's, again, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but maybe some players will find that as a breach of privacy. But related to the previous point, I'm actually kind of in favor of this because, yeah, any kind of fear that they could remove from having additional security, that's totally fine with me. Now here's a point in the new terms of service that has definitely created a stir within the online communities. Niantic can terminate inactive accounts after a period of inactivity. Yeah, you can have your own opinions regarding this, but if you have friends and family who haven't been playing Pokemon Go in a long time, make sure you let them know that their account could be deleted if they stay inactive. And if they ever intend to come back to the game, maybe they should log in once in a while so that their account never gets deleted. That's really kind of unfortunate. I really do not like something like this being a part of Pokemon Go. I think something that was always great about Pokemon Go is that people could take long breaks and they could come back if they're really excited about something being added into the game. And I think it would be really sad if a lot of the time and the energy and the money that they spent on their accounts get deleted because they want to take a break. So yeah, hopefully Niantic doesn't ever act on this, but they definitely give themselves the right to do it. Now, Niantic can use your data for emergency notifications and public event leaderboards. This is something where I'm actually kind of excited about this being into terms of service because essentially what they're saying is that now they could have in-game leaderboards, which is something that I've actually been advocating for. Niantic is not liable for damages resulting from third-party services affecting your use of the services. Yeah, this is also something that you typically see in terms of services. I'm not really going to get into it. Niantic could refuse admission or remove minors from events without a parent or guardian. Again, a lot of stuff that you typically see. Niantic could use your feedback and analytical data collected during beta programs without compensation. Yeah, this is another easy one. If you're doing any kind of beta testing and they specifically mention that it's going to be a free, unpaid beta testing, then they don't have to compensate you. That's totally understandable. Niantic could change or remove any virtual money or virtual goods without liability, which essentially means they could make changes to your account without ever having to be at fault for it. Like, you can't complain about them taking away Pokecoins or items, or at least you can't sue them for it. So, Niantic could use your data for demonstration, promotion, and advertising of services. This is related to the earlier one I said, where Niantic could now use your data for however they see fit. Quite unfortunate, but that is now a part of the new terms of service. And then finally, Niantic could terminate your account for suspected fraud, cheating, or misuse of content or services. This is something that was already in the terms of service, but essentially they're just clarifying it and they're just repeating it because, of course, Niantic wants to ban cheaters. If you're someone who spoofs, if you're someone who hacks into the game for whatever reason, Niantic has the right to ban you, and you can't do anything about that. Niantic can modify the terms at any time, and continued use implies acceptance of changes. You must use the services at your own risk and be aware of your surroundings. This is all stuff that's already talked about in the previous points, so they're essentially just repeating this stuff so that you are fully aware of it. Certain country-specific terms apply, which may affect your rights and obligations. Yeah, considering that there's a lot of things related to breach of privacy and a lot of things related to in-person events, if different countries have different laws and different restrictions and Niantic can't do any of that stuff, well, they're just pointing that out. So, yeah. You must create an account to use the specific services and are responsible for all activities under your account. You must comply with all applicable laws and event policies while using these services. Niantic provides a limited, non-exclusive license to use the apps and services. You must use the services in a safe and appropriate manner, avoiding any unlawful or inappropriate content. You must provide accurate information when registering for events or purchasing tickets. You must not use the services for commercial purposes without permission. Ooh, that one gave me a bit of a shiver because I have a YouTube channel related to this game. I'm essentially profiting off of Pokemon Go. I hope they don't, interpret it that way. I'm not using Pokemon Go footage to create advertisements for other products or anything. It's really just part of my branding, so I don't necessarily know how that all works, but yeah, if they were to go against content creators like how Nintendo does it, now they can do that without any recourse. So yeah, that one gave me a bit of a pause, but let's continue. Niantic can monitor and remove content that violates the terms of service and is objectionable. So, stuff like naming your Pokemon or naming your trainer character very derogatory things, and Niantic is not able to catch it. Niantic could now remove that stuff from your game. So yeah. You must use supported devices and internet connections to access the services. You must not share your account password and must notify Niantic of any unauthorized use. Oh boy, considering so many players do share their accounts with different players, or players will, share the same account among different people, Niantic could now ban you for that. And that's going to be something that a lot of players will be discussing, because I know a lot of players who definitely share their accounts in order to get 100% IVs or regionals or what have you. Yeah, that's all stuff that's going to be breaking the terms of service and can get you banned, so be aware of that. You must not engage in any activity that may result in injury or death or property damage or liability. That's an obvious one. You must comply with all health and safety policies at events. You must not use unauthorized software or techniques to alter or falsify your device's location. Boom, there it is. Niantic is telling you specifically you can't spoof. That's pretty common sense. You must not collect or share personally identifiable information of other users without permission. You cannot dox someone. You cannot try to find someone through locations in the game. That's a totally fair one. I feel like they're trying to protect their own players there, so I'm totally in agreement with that. You must not reverse engineer, decompile, or disassemble the apps or services. Oh boy. So for data miners, this is definitely going to give them pause. Basically, Niantic is stating that you cannot do that, and that is totally understandable. Data miners tend to spoil a lot of things with the game, but they also tend to provide some very key bits of information. So some players may disagree with this, but yeah, it's in terms of service, and I totally understand why it is. You must not use the services to violate any applicable law or regulation. You must not use the services to harass, threaten, or violate the legal rights of others. And you must not use the services to gain unauthorized access to any property or location. Do not use Pokemon Go as an excuse to break the law, is basically what they're saying. And again, that's common sense. Don't do that. Don't be using Pokemon Go to lure people to mug them. Do not use Pokemon Go to trespass into different properties. And do not use Pokemon Go to just create a ruckus and to create a disruption for everyone trying to live their lives. Simple as that. You can opt out of the arbitrary agreement within 30 days. So after you've accepted the terms of service, and let's say you find out all this and you're like, oh wow, I do not actually agree with this and I don't want to play Pokemon Go anymore, then you have 30 days from the point you hit accept. So interesting enough. Parents can monitor their children's online activity and use of the services through the Niantic Kids parent portal. You can terminate your account at any time through the app help centers. Niantic respects intellectual property rights and complies with the DMCA process. You could submit feedback and suggestions to Niantic, which they may use to improve services. Yeah, they've certainly had a good track record of that. So, what are my overall thoughts regarding this new terms of service? Well, I've already shared some of my thoughts regarding some of the pressing ones, but I think overall, this is probably one of the strongest terms of services that we've seen so far. Niantic has definitely added some language that both covers their bases, but also could be a detriment to any player if Niantic were to get malicious with it. I personally feel like Niantic has good intentions with this terms of service. I think a majority of it is meant to just cover themselves legally. And at the same time, there's definitely some points in there where they're trying to protect their players. They don't want players to get harmed, and that's totally understandable. But yeah, a lot of the stuff related to data ownership and a lot of the stuff related to invasion of privacy, I think that's something that Niantic should take a second look at, because I don't think that's going to be something that a majority of players would be comfortable with. I totally understand that they're trying to get rid of cheaters and they're trying to open up different methods for detecting cheating, but at the same time, I do think there needs to be lines that they never cross, and I don't think it's okay for them to just freely look through your phone looking for those apps. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe someone else could argue against that, but in my opinion, I think detecting spoofers and detecting cheaters should not come at the cost of taking away some privacy from their players. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding this new terms of service down below. It's definitely going to be controversial. There's definitely going to be things that players are not going to be happy about. I would like to know your thoughts regarding everything in this terms of service down below. If there's something that you're really concerned with, definitely share what that is. And yeah, with that, let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that notification bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a shout out to all my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Content channel and join all the players that you see on the bottom of your screen, make sure you go and check out my Patreon, because for all of my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a different way, you can do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow. And that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.
진솔아와 함께해